My wife's face was printed on a schoolboard yard sign outside a blue house I had never seen. The name beneath it was Erin Vale, her maiden name, and the slogan said listen. Stay. Build. Traffic had narrowed to one lane, so I had several seconds to decide the photograph only looked like her. Then I saw the small notch in her left eyebrow and the silver earrings I had given her for our 19th anniversary. A plastic box beside the mailbox held campaign flyers. I pulled to the curb, took one, and read the first sentence with my engine running. Erin and her husband, Tom Bell, have made Millbrook home for nearly 6 years. I had been Erin's husband for 19 years, and that Sunday she was supposedly at an education grant retreat in Dayton. I did not knock on the blue door. I stayed by my truck, photographed the sign from the public road, folded the flyer once, and called her. She answered after 4 rings in a bright voice that sounded prepared. Hey. I'm between sessions. Everything okay? I asked what the hotel was serving for lunch. There was a pause, then she said chicken wraps and soup. Behind her I heard a dog bark twice and a man say, the signs for Hawthorne are in the garage. Erin covered the phone or moved it. Caleb, I've got to go back in. What hotel are you at? The Fairfield near the university. Why? I looked at the blue house. A gray-haired man stepped out carrying a stack of the same signs. He wore a sweatshirt that said Bell Electric. He set the signs in an SUV and went back inside without seeing me. No reason, I said. Drive safely tomorrow. I ended the call before I asked who Tom was. I had been detoured through Millbrook on my way to my sister Leah's house. 35 minutes from Columbus, it was close enough to fit Erin's statewide grant work and far enough that I had never passed through without a reason. In a grocery store lot, I opened the public campaign page. It showed Erin placing signs with Thomas Bell, a local electrical contractor and campaign treasurer, speaking at a school bond meeting, and holding cupcakes in the blue kitchen. The page said she had moved to Millbrook 6 years earlier. Tuesday dinners and 2 working Saturdays each month matched the nights she told me belonged to rural districts. In one photograph, she wore a plain gold band instead of the 5-diamond ring she often left home because, she said, hotel soap made her fingers swell. I stopped after saving the public page. The flyer already proved that strangers had been given a version of my wife in which I did not exist. I called Leah and said I needed her to come outside alone when I arrived. She opened the passenger door before I had turned off the engine. You look sick, she said. I handed her the flyer. She read it once, then again more slowly. Is this current? The website says the first candidate forum is Thursday. Who is Tom Bell? According to Erin, nobody. Leah looked toward her house, where her husband and son were waiting for the tools. Do you want me to search him? No. I want you to tell me not to go back and pound on that door. Don't go back and pound on that door. That didn't help as much as I hoped. She put the flyer on the dashboard. Then come inside and let me make coffee while you decide what you actually need. I stayed for 20 minutes. I told Leah only what I had seen and heard. Erin and I were not separated, even privately. We shared a bedroom, household account, insurance, and a lease renewed 8 months earlier. She had kissed me in our kitchen before leaving for Dayton. Leah asked what I would do if Tom opened the blue door and said he knew all about me. I did not know, which was another reason I had stayed outside. On my way home, I bought a paper folder and saved the public pages. I did not search Erin's laptop or turn on location sharing we had never used. At the distribution warehouse where I coordinated safety training, the first rule around a jammed conveyor was to stop the machine before reaching in. I decided to do the same with my marriage, preserve what I had, make no public move, and wait until Erin came home. Then a new video appeared on the campaign page. It had been posted that morning from Mabel's. Erin stood in front of a row of volunteers, with Tom slightly behind her. Millbrook gave Tom and me the kind of community where people notice when a family needs help, she said. We chose not to have children, but schools still shape every street we live on. I watched that sentence 3 times. Erin and I had chosen not to have children after years of conversations that belonged to us. The decision was not a secret, but it was private. She had not merely given Tom my place beside her. She had carried one of the hardest agreements of our marriage into his house and presented it as something they had decided together. I sent Erin a photograph of the flyer on our kitchen table. Beneath it I wrote, "Come home tonight. Do not delete anything. We will not discuss this by text." The typing dots appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Finally she wrote, "I can explain the campaign language. I'll leave now." She arrived 2 hours later with the same overnight bag she had taken to Dayton. Her face looked composed until she saw Leah's car outside. "Why is your sister here?" she asked. "Because I didn't want to be alone when you came in. You made this a family event before letting me speak. I found a campaign saying my wife has another husband. You can speak." Erin put her bag down but kept her coat on. She said Tom was a longtime colleague and that local campaigns often used familiar language because voters distrusted outsiders. "The flyer says you live with him." "I spend a lot of time in Millbrook." "It says husband." That was copy Nora wrote. "Tom and I are the visible team." "Does Tom believe he is your husband?" Erin looked at the folder instead of me. "Not legally." "Does he believe you and I are married in every ordinary meaning of the word?" "Caleb, there are things about us we haven't said out loud for years. We said good morning Friday. We renewed this lease together. We sleep in the same bed. Sharing a bed is not the same as sharing a life." Leah shifted in the living room, and Erin lowered her voice. "Can we do this without an audience?" I asked Leah to stay but moved with Erin to the kitchen. The doorway remained open. Erin admitted she had used Tom's address for the campaign. She said she had spent enough time there to consider Millbrook her community and that her election advisor believed she met the local requirements. When I asked whether an election advisor knew she was married to me and leased a home in Columbus, she said, "They know I have ties outside the district." "I'm not a tie outside the district. I'm your husband." She flinched, which was the first time that word seemed to reach her. I asked whether she was having a physical relationship with Tom. She sat down and pressed both hands between her knees. "Yes." I could hear Leah open a cabinet in the other room, then close it without taking anything. I asked how long. Erin said, "It developed gradually." I asked for a number. 7 years, on and off at first. Not off for the last 5. I had expected the sign to be misleading in some complicated way. Her answer was simpler and worse. I held the back of a chair but did not sit. 7 years included my mother's death, Erin's promotion, our anniversary trip to Maine, the 6 months my warehouse changed owners and I came home unsure whether my job would survive. She had been with Tom through all of it. "Who does he think I am?" I asked. "My former husband. We stayed on the lease for financial reasons." "Former as in divorced?" "Yes." She tried to reach for my hand and stopped before touching it. "I know how that sounds. It sounds like a sentence you have used many times." I asked for her car keys, not to keep them, but because my hands were shaking and I did not want her to leave angry and drive. She placed them on the table. We agreed she would sleep in the guest room and leave in the morning for a hotel or a friend's house. I did not have the right to throw her out of a jointly leased home, and I did not pretend I did. I told her not to move joint money, erase public campaign material, or bring Tom into our home. She said he had never been there. Then she added, too quickly, "Not inside." I stared at her. She admitted he had picked her up twice from the curb. "You gave him our address." He already knew it. He thought it was the place we kept until the divorce was final. I took my medication from the upstairs bathroom and locked the bedroom door. Leah took the living room couch, and I lay awake upstairs. Around midnight, the campaign biography changed. Husband Tom became campaign treasurer Tom Bell. The sentence about making Millbrook home for 6 years remained. The video in which Erin said they chose not to have children disappeared. I had saved it. What frightened me was not that someone had corrected a mistake. It was how quickly an entire marriage could be edited into a different category when the wrong husband saw it. The next morning, family law attorney Monica Reyes stopped me when I began listing photographs. What decision would the 10th one change, she asked. She told me to preserve public material, avoid private accounts, leave joint funds alone, and separate my marriage and financial questions from any residency issue belonging to election officials. She could state that no separation existed, but she would not turn divorce counsel into campaign sabotage. I was relieved because part of me had pictured walking into Thursday's forum with our wedding certificate. Erin left for her co-worker Dana's house and called 7 years and another address a personal language error. I went to work, forgot a basic term during forklift training, and took 2 personal days. That evening Leah closed the campaign video on my laptop. A replay can't tell you how she said it, she told me. I printed the public pages once and stopped refreshing the site. That night, Tom emailed my work address, which was listed on a warehouse safety committee page. His subject line was Erin. The message said he had learned from her that I had found the campaign material and wanted to know whether I was willing to speak. He added, "I was told your divorce was complete except for a retirement account order and lease paperwork. I understand now that may not be accurate." He signed it Thomas Bell, not Tom. I forwarded the message to Monica. She said I could answer if I kept the conversation voluntary, factual, and free of threats. I wrote that Erin and I were legally married, had never filed for divorce, shared a home and bedroom, and had not agreed to outside relationships. I offered a call with Leah present. Thomas replied an hour later asking to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our towns. He did not apologize. He said he did not want to discuss private messages or intimate details. I agreed because I did not want them either. Leah came with me and took the chair beside mine, her notebook closed on the table. Thomas arrived carrying a campaign folder and began before he had removed his coat. He had known a legal husband remained in Columbus, but Erin said the divorce was delayed by property paperwork and my recovery after losing a plant management job. I had never managed a plant or lost my job. She had expanded 4 months of uncertainty during a warehouse sale into a reason he should not contact me. "You never checked?" I asked. "I did. She said the case was restricted because your father's care expenses were involved." That did not make sense. Not enough sense. I chose not to press because every answer came with a reason pressing would hurt somebody. He had not built Erin's lies, but he had accepted answers he knew were weak. They met through a vocational lab grant 7 years earlier, and the affair became physical 5 months later. For 5 years, Thomas believed our marriage had ended privately while Erin stayed at his house on the Tuesdays, Thursdays, and working weekends I assigned to rural meetings. She had a key, clothes, campaign mail, utility expenses, and an office there. Neighbors knew her as his partner. She even introduced Thomas to my father for 3 minutes at a public concert as an education contractor. My father needed occasional rides, not the constant care. Erin used to explain why she could not leave Columbus. Thomas showed only public items and campaign records. I asked for no private messages. One neighborhood calendar made the double life visible without exposing anything intimate. On the Saturday of Dad's 78th birthday, Erin ate pancakes with us at 9, left at 11 for what she called a grant deadline, and appeared beside Thomas at a Millbrook levy table by 2. He believed she had spent the morning closing our old storage account with me. I remembered her coming home that night with blue ink on her wrist and saying a printer cartridge had leaked. The campaign photograph showed a volunteer stamp in the same color. Neither version required an impossible trip. The system worked because the towns were close and because each man received enough of her day to stop asking where the rest had gone. When he opened the folder, I saw a biography worksheet with legal marital status printed near the bottom. The typed answer was divorce pending, separate household since 2020, beside it, in handwriting, someone had written confirm before filing. Who wrote that? I asked. Nora, the campaign manager. Erin told us her attorney expected completion in July. It was August. Thomas said Nora had removed the husband language after learning the truth, then suspended campaign activity until Erin provided counsel. Why did the flyer call you husband if you knew she wasn't legally free? Leah asked. He winced. Because I thought husband described the life, even if the court had not caught up. That was convenient for me. He and Erin had worn plain bands at campaign events for 2 years. He knew she removed hers before returning to Columbus. He had never asked what ring she wore with me. He had stopped one question short for years because the unfinished answer let him keep her. We sat in silence until the barista called a name none of us recognized. I asked Thomas whether he expected Erin to move into the Blue House full-time. He said yes. The campaign had been her idea, but he believed it marked the end of her divided life. She had told him public service would make secrecy impossible and that she would finally finish the divorce before the first candidate forum. Thursday? I asked. Yes. The forum was 3 days away. Did she say what she would tell me? That the campaign forced a work relocation and you had already accepted the marriage was over. I laughed once, not because it was funny. The previous month, Erin and I had renewed our lease through the following June. She had insisted on the longer term because moving during grant season would be exhausting. Thomas stared at me. She renewed a lease with you? For 11 more months. He took out his phone, then put it face down. She told me your landlord required month-to-month extensions while the settlement was open. For 7 years, I had imagined an affair as stolen time. Thomas described something built to survive ordinary questions, another address, another ring, another circle of friends, another account of my work and my father, and now a public role. Still, the campaign was not an exit plan in the way Thomas believed. Erin had locked herself into another year at home with me while promising to become fully visible with him in 3 days. The election had not forced her to choose. It had forced both stories into the same week, and she had prepared a different explanation for each man. Thomas admitted he would have stood beside Erin Thursday without a case number because he hoped public questions would force the truth he had avoided. He stepped down as treasurer and gave the records to the campaign advisor. We did not shake hands. Monica notified Erin's counsel that no divorce or separation existed and that I would answer lawful questions truthfully. We did not contact the district, election office, newspaper, or Erin's employer. Erin called me after receiving the notice. You met Tom. It was an accusation. He contacted me. You had no right to discuss me with him. You told him I lost a job I never had. You told him we filed a divorce that does not exist. I was going to unwind it. Before Thursday. She went quiet. I asked for a complete account of health risk, spending, addresses, obligations, and temporary housing. And the campaign, she asked. Correct what is false. The rest belongs to you and your advisors. She cried, then accused me of hiding behind procedure. Procedure is keeping me from walking into Thursday's forum with our marriage certificate, I said. The image frightened both of us, and I made clear I would not do it. When she blamed Thomas for the husband wording, I said, he helped. You said it on camera. She ended the call. That night the candidate forum announced that Erin Vale would not attend because of a personal matter. Her name remained on the campaign page, but the volunteer photographs disappeared one by one. I did not know whether she was withdrawing, fighting to remain, or building a third explanation. For the first time, however, I no longer needed to discover what the campaign meant. I needed Erin to explain why she had promised Thomas a public marriage while privately renewing another year with me. Erin returned Wednesday with a banker's box, a laptop, and her own attorney's advice. Leah remained in the living room because anger had already made both of us careless. Erin had requested campaign withdrawal, not because I ordered it, she said, but because she could not answer its questions without explaining a lie. I asked her not to build a paper wall and started with health and the current relationship. The physical affair began 6 years and 7 months earlier, there had been no real off period, and protection had once been inconsistent. Thomas had entered our townhouse once during my Cleveland conference, despite her earlier denial. I was answering the larger truth, she said. A larger truth does not erase a smaller lie. I asked about my name, credit, address, and father. She had not signed for me or taken his money, but she used Thomas's address for campaign and volunteer mail and registered to vote in Millbrook. The residency question remained for advisors, not me. Our Columbus address remained on her taxes, payroll, insurance, and driver's license. She had used the blue house where public visibility helped and our townhouse where legal continuity helped. When I asked whether she understood those addresses could not both become home whenever a form favored one, she said her advisor had discussed physical presence and intent. What was your intent? I asked. She looked at the two address lists and said, to avoid losing either place before I knew what I was doing. That answer was more useful than another argument about technical residency. She admitted arranging the 3-minute concert introduction so Thomas would stop imagining my father as helpless. You made him a prop without taking $1, I said. I stood so quickly that my chair hit the cabinet and Leah appeared. My father had liked the electrician who knew old jazz recordings, while Erin sat beside me and called Thomas kind. I bent the yard sign until a wire tore the cardboard and cut my thumb. Blood dotted Erin's legal pad. Leah wrapped my hand, and I moved the sign where I could not touch it again. Tell me why you renewed the lease, I said. Erin first blamed the favorable rent, then admitted she loved our townhouse, Dad, Leah's family, and the predictable life we had built. Thomas thought Thursday would end the split, while she had renewed our lease because she feared losing the election, losing him, and discovering their life only worked 2 nights at a time. Our marriage remained her insurance while the public life faced pressure. When I said that, she shouted that she had not assigned every fork to a man, she was trying to get through each day. You built a campaign, I said. She answered that Millbrook saw her as a person with ideas, while home had narrowed into rent, appointments, shifts, and deadlines. I reminded her that I had attended her grant dinners, proofread applications, and adjusted my shifts when she traveled. You did, she said. And then you complained that I was never present. I complained when you canceled our anniversary weekend. I had a deadline. And worked on it from Tom's kitchen. She stopped. The deadline had been real. So was the blue kitchen. Erin kept offering one true piece as a defense for the part she had hidden. Thomas was not an escape from cruelty. She had slowly reclassified ordinary distance as permission, then used Millbrook to become Erin Vale even though her skill and confidence had grown during the years she was Erin Morris. Why call him your husband? I asked. People kept asking why I was at his house. Nora said they would keep asking until I gave them a simple answer. So you called him your husband and called me an ex? Yes. The campaign had forced every loose explanation into one public story. Thomas became husband, his house became home, our child-free decision became theirs, my job uncertainty became a lost career, and Dad became the reason an imaginary divorce could not finish. Erin turned the yellow pad toward me. 3 headings ran across the top: win, lose, and withdraw. Under win, she would admit the affair and move to Millbrook. Under lose, she would come home and end it with Thomas. Under withdraw, she would describe him as a political partner and postpone everything. You had an answer for every campaign result, I said. You just didn't have one for either husband. They were notes, Caleb, not final decisions. That is the problem. You gave the election 3 versions of the truth before you gave me one. She pulled the pad back, crossed out nothing, and set her pen beside it. For once, she did not try to improve the wording. She offered transparency and counseling, but Thomas had already told her not to return until she could name what she was leaving. I asked whether she wanted our marriage or only feared losing it. Erin cried before saying she wanted the safe parts: breakfast with me, Dad's calls, Leah's family, the townhouse where nobody expected her to be inspiring. Those are people and a home, not emergency supplies, I said. She insisted the love had been real. I told her I was not trying to prove every good morning false. I was trying to imagine the first Tuesday she ran late and what I would become while waiting. Her offer of calendars and passwords sounded less like a marriage than a permanent audit. I asked what would have happened if I had never seen the sign. If the forum went well, she claimed she would have told me soon. If it went badly, she would have come back to the lease she had protected. I told her I would not attempt reconciliation while she treated discovery as the event that made honesty valuable. I proposed short-term housing, continued lease payments, written property visits, testing, and limited counseling through counsel. When Erin asked to keep calling Dad, I said he first deserved enough of the truth to choose whether he wanted contact. She claimed he depended on her weekly calls. Leah answered from the living room, he enjoys them. Do not turn affection into dependence because that story helped somewhere else. Erin stopped arguing. We agreed Leah and I would tell him only that Erin had maintained another long relationship, had involved Thomas in one public meeting with him, and that we were separating. We would not turn him into a judge or provide campaign gossip. Erin would wait for him to decide whether he wanted contact. That boundary upset her more than leaving the race. For years, Dad's affection had been one fact shared by both lives, genuine at home, useful in Millbrook. Now it belonged to him again. Her papers showed no second mortgage, secret company, or stolen inheritance. She paid Thomas toward food and utilities from an individual account after meeting our agreed household contribution. Early estimates placed relationship and Millbrook spending near $19,000. The amount required accounting, not a larger number invented to make the betrayal sound serious. Campaign donations remained in the committee account, and Erin's professional reimbursements would be reviewed separately from personal travel. I did not accuse her of stealing every dollar she earned. The financial betrayal was specific. She helped support another household while asking me to postpone savings decisions in ours. I did not need to call it theft to know I had made those decisions without the truth. Our attorneys would draft temporary rules for ordinary expenses, debt, access, and public statements. She closed the laptop and asked for the bent yard sign. It belongs to the campaign, she said. Then take it. She lifted it carefully by the unbroken wire. My blood had dried beside her printed shoulder. I never wanted you to see me this way, she said. You wanted thousands of other people to. I regretted the sentence but did not retract it. She said wanting to serve the schools was real. I told her I believed that. It did not change what she had built around the campaign. 2 days later, the campaign page posted a 6-sentence withdrawal. Erin cited unresolved questions about residency and personal representations, apologized to volunteers, and said the district deserved a candidate able to meet every requirement without distraction. She did not name me, Thomas, or the affair. Local comments ranged from kind to suspicious and then moved toward the remaining candidates. There was no viral scandal, no reporter on my porch, and no crowd demanding the complete story. The public life ended more quietly than Erin had feared. The private life did not. My medical tests required no further treatment. The accountant placed relationship-linked spending at $21,300 over 6 years and 7 months. There was no hidden loan, forged signature, property interest in the Blue House, debt in my name, or misuse of Learning Reach funds. Her employer handled a few mixed-purpose mileage questions without my involvement. I contacted no donor, district official, or colleague. Whether Erin met a technical residency test was never decided in a hearing because she withdrew before final certification. That unresolved legal question stopped mattering to my decisions. What mattered was that she had used one address as a marriage, another as a public home, and a fictional pending divorce as the corridor between them. Dad took the short version badly, but not in the way Erin predicted. He was less upset about Thomas at the concert than about the dependent old man story. I need a ride sometimes, he said. I don't need to be used as a locked gate. He asked Leah whether Erin's weekly calls had been fake. Leah told him we could not know that and did not have to decide every memory at once. Dad chose not to speak with Erin for 3 months. Erin mailed her first letter to Leah rather than using Dad's address without permission. Leah carried it into his apartment and left it sealed beside his coffee. Dad called me that evening and asked whether I thought he should read it. That has to be yours, I said. You're allowed to say no. I know I'm allowed. I'm asking what you would do. I'd probably read it and be angry that I wanted to. He laughed once. At least that sounds honest. He opened it after I left. The next week, he told me Erin had apologized without asking him to defend her or forgive her. He kept the letter in a drawer for another month before choosing a 10-minute phone call. Their relationship became occasional and direct. I did not supervise it. Thomas ended the relationship 2 weeks after the withdrawal. In one email, he apologized for accepting explanations that protected what he wanted. I read it once and archived it. Erin and I attended 2 discernment sessions. In the first, she described herself as divided between safety and recognition. I asked why both forms required deceiving the people who provided them. In the second, the counselor asked what transparency would look like if we stayed married. Erin offered 1 address, 1 ring, shared calendars, and no private travel. I imagined checking every Tuesday dinner, every rural meeting, every campaign page, and every phrase she used about me when I was absent. Then I imagined becoming the reason she said she could not serve, travel, or speak publicly. Neither future resembled consent. I filed for divorce the next week. Because we rented and had no children, the practical process was simpler than the emotional one. Simpler did not mean instant. We divided savings and retirement interests, assigned furniture, accounted for Erin's personal spending within the overall settlement, and remained jointly responsible for the townhouse lease until the landlord approved my solo tenancy through June. Erin moved into a furnished apartment near her office, then signed a regular lease after the divorce. I stayed in the townhouse because Dad's residence and my warehouse were nearby. Both of us kept our jobs. Erin did not run for office again while our case was pending. She continued grant work but left the Millbrook volunteer boards that had introduced her as Thomas's spouse. Some people learned that the campaign biography was false. Most never learned why. The legal dissolution took 11 months. On paper, it required fewer pages than Erin had pretended existed for years. I thought that would feel like irony. Mostly it felt like administration catching up to a decision we had finally made. The first few Tuesdays in the empty townhouse were the hardest. I kept expecting Erin's message about a late regional call, then remembered there was no schedule left for me to verify. I began eating dinner with Dad twice a month, not to replace her visits but because I wanted to be there and could say exactly why. For the first 2 months after Erin moved out, I avoided Cedar Street even when the bridge detour remained active. I drove 9 extra miles to Leah's house. I told myself I wanted to avoid Thomas, but the blue house was not visible from his driveway alone. It was visible because I had once seen a complete version of my wife there. The longer route let me pretend geography had caused the betrayal. Leah never challenged me until winter, when snow closed the county road I preferred and I canceled dinner rather than use the detour. "You work around forklifts," she said over the phone. "You know avoidance can be a temporary control, not a permanent design. Did you save that for me?" "Yes." I still stayed home. Erin returned to the townhouse in March to collect the last boxes before the lease changed. Leah was present, but the afternoon remained calm. Erin took books, kitchen equipment, framed prints, and the desk from the guest room. She left the campaign material until the end. 2 sealed boxes had been stored in her coworker's garage and returned after the committee closed its account. She opened one to verify the inventory. Inside were volunteer lists, unused flyers, clipboards, buttons, and dozens of folded yard signs. On every sign, the woman I had lived with smiled beside a name she had not used at home for 19 years. "The committee removed the wires," Erin said. "I can take the signs. They're yours." She held one flyer and read the biography. Nora wrote the first draft after interviewing both of us. I corrected the years in Millbrook from 7 to 6 because 7 would overlap too obviously. She looked embarrassed by the admission. I thought accuracy inside the lie made it less dishonest. Did it? No. She put the flyer back. I asked whether she missed Thomas. Erin said yes. She also missed Dad, the townhouse, and the version of the campaign that had not yet met reality. "Missing something is not proof you were entitled to it," she said. That is one thing I learned. I believed she had learned it. Learning did not return the marriage. Before leaving, she asked whether I still took the long road to Leah's. "Most of the time," I said. She told me Thomas had sold the blue house and moved closer to his daughter in Cincinnati. I had not asked, but I was relieved he would not be waiting on that porch. Erin carried the boxes to her car without asking me to help. Her final apology was specific. "I'm sorry I made your job, your father, and our lease into explanations for why I could not act. I'm sorry I gave our decisions to another marriage. I thanked her for saying it accurately. Then I closed the door. We did not hug. In April, Dad asked me to take him to a Saturday jazz program at the Millbrook Library. I suggested a different performance in Columbus. He looked at me over his glasses. Is the music worse in that town now? No. Then I want the quartet I picked. The fastest route used Cedar Street. I almost entered the longer address into my phone, then put it down and followed the road signs. The campaign placards were gone. The blue house had a moving container in the driveway and a child's bicycle beside the porch. I kept my eyes forward until Dad said, "Was that it?" "Yes." "You can look, Caleb. A house can't lie to you. People can use one. That's different." He turned up the radio, ending the conversation. At the library, a volunteer asked whether we lived in the district. Dad said no, we were visitors. We listened to the quartet and left past a bulletin board with pale rectangles where campaign posters had been. Months later, after the divorce was final, a new bridge project redirected traffic through Millbrook again. By then I had moved from the townhouse to a smaller apartment with a balcony that faced the warehouse lights. I still coordinated safety training. Dad still called when he needed a ride and refused when he did not. Leah's son had cleaned our father's old tools and built a workbench with them. On the first Friday of the detour, I started toward my 9-mile alternate route from habit. Then I stayed in the marked lane. Cedar Street looked ordinary. The blue house had new owners, a red front door, and no sign on the lawn. 2 people carried grocery bags from a car while the child's bicycle lay in the grass. I did not know their names or what they called each other inside. I did not need to. Traffic moved, the car behind me kept a reasonable distance, and I drove past the blue house without slowing.